Platinum End has kicked off its first episode, and while I had a lot of hesitation coming in this show just because it seemed like there was a lot of negativity around the original source material, the manga, but being, of course, that it's by the same maker of Death Note, I still want to give it a chance, and I'm hoping that this adaptation will definitely change a lot of people's minds. But this is my thoughts on the first episode of Platinum End, so let's jump right into it. Opening up this episode, we get a solid introduction to our main character, Midai. Obviously, it seems like he's from a very rough situation. His entire family is pretty much killed, and he started having to live with his uncle. And it turns out his uncle is very abusive and just kind of kicked him around all the time. All the way until now, where it seems like it's a good 10 years later on when he's in high school and everything. He has kind of given up on everything. He claims that there's everybody has dreams and hopes, and he's kind of lost all of his. So after school one day, after nearly stealing something, he ends up going to the top of a building and jumping off of it. But he doesn't die. He's actually caught by an angel that nobody else can see. And this angel pretty much tells him, even though he's like, look, what are you doing? Drop me. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This angel pretty much pushes upon him the idea that she's there to bring him happiness. And after a little bit of while talking between the two of them, she eventually says, look, I'm going to give you two options. You can either have freedom by giving you wings that you can fly anywhere you want to go, or love. I can give you this arrow that essentially if you use this arrow on anybody, they'll fall in love with you. You can control them. And he kind of just jokingly says, well, then both of them. Otherwise, I won't agree. And she's like, okay, sure. He's like, wait, you said it. I had to decide. She's like, no, I just wanted to do that. It's formalities. And how she does this is she gives him a bracelet and a necklace. And these two things essentially manifest, one manifests wings and one manifests these arrows. Not only just this arrow that will cause people to essentially fall in love with him and basically have him be able to control them, but also a white arrow. And this white arrow apparently can kill things, which you don't find out until later, but we'll get into that in a minute. And so using these wings, he flies around, kind of gets a re-spark of love for the world because he's able to go wherever he wants. It's very beautiful, the place that he's able to see. But eventually it comes to this point where she catches up with him and says, you're doing really great with your wings, and then reveals to him that all of his issues are essentially caused by his aunt and uncle. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, they killed your parents. And he's like, wait, what? How do you know this is true? And she's like, I've been watching you, so I know what happened to you and your family. She tells him, well, if you want to find out, use your arrow on them and have them tell you. So that's what he does. He goes home, ends up finding his aunt's there, uses the arrow on the aunt, and asks her, what happened with my parents? And then she's like, well, it was your uncle's idea. I loved you. I didn't want to do this. And of course, she's an entire time infatuated by him because this arrow hit her. And so she's just in love with him. But she keeps telling him, it was the uncle's idea. He wanted the money. So he thought that if he got rid of the family, he would be able to inherit all the money. And that he rigged their car to explode when they got in there because he knew that every day they got in the car and went to work, whatever. And so obviously this is traumatizing him. The uncle walks in the door and they're fighting over the fact that she's revealing all this stuff to Midai. And then eventually him in a fit of anger says, I wish you guys would just die. And being that she is in love with him, and they specifically have Nase, the angel, tells him that because she feels grief for what they did, in a feat of love, she was looking to correct it by ending her own life. So it does kind of insinuate the idea that it's not that he's able to just command and say, do this. It's because these two factors came into play, which caused her to do it. Insinuating that if he were walking down the street and shot, a random passerby with this red arrow and they were in love with him, he wouldn't just be able to say, do this, because it would be outside of the bounds of logic. So yeah, she ends her own life right in front of everybody, and the uncle's freaking out, and Nase is pretty much, talking to him and telling him, what happened, and he starts recalling memories of his mother. His mother hoped that he would find happiness. So he decides, based on this, that his mother, at least, would want him to live on and to find happiness. So he leaves there, goes and finds a random hotel, uses the arrow to get a place to stay. And while she's pretty much, Nase's telling, look, you can go find anything you want. Go get some money. Go steal stuff. You can do that stuff. He's like, no, I don't want to have happiness from that. I wouldn't be happy if I went and stole things or manipulated people to get, even though he has a hotel that he's living in because he's manipulating people. He doesn't want to find happiness. He wants a normal happiness. He wants a family and everything. Well, then Nase's like, well, why don't you just go get your money from your uncle? Just go kill him, and then you can get the money that your family had. And he's like, well, why would I do that? And that's when she reveals that he does have this white arrow. This white arrow apparently has a 100% chance of hitting things, and it's 100% chance that they'll die. And that, oh yeah, by the way, I meant to tell you before, you're now one of 13 god candidates. Apparently there's no god, and he is part of this system that will essentially select who's going to be the next god. And the only people that are selected, these 13 people that were selected, are people that have essentially lost the will to live or cannot find the meaning of life. They're chosen to be part of this whole god candidate system. And apparently every single one of these god candidates will get wings, and they will get these arrows. And then it shows briefly at the very end this one guy that's in like this, I don't know, like some sort of Power Ranger Sentai robot suit. And he's going to a car where this guy's inside of there, which apparently used his red arrow to make all these women love him, and he kills them with the white arrow. And he says something like, oh, you were only given the red arrow, you weren't given the white arrow. See, that's pretty much how it opens up. Pretty much a guy that's given up on everything. He's now given this new power that is making him a candidate. Not necessarily that he wanted it, but now he's got it. And that there are now 12 candidates total. Him along with 11 other, because it seems like one of them was already taken out. And they're all essentially fighting to be the new god. And yeah, that's where it's kind of leaving it. So far, yeah, very, very Death Note-esque. I mean, you got a main character who's already really kind of in that gray area. He's already pretty much killed his first person. And not necessarily that he wanted to, but it might be one of those things where it slowly molds him into accepting it if, you know, those that are around him are evil. Obviously, he's finding a new happiness in something, a new goal that he can focus on. Obviously, having, instead of it be Ryuk, it's now this angel Nase, giving him the power. Granted, technically with Ryuk, it was more self-interest. He wanted to be humored, where Nase seems like she's focused on just giving Mirai happiness. It keeps showing this vision of Mirai with some girl when they were younger. I'm wondering if Nase will end up being some sort of spiritual version of that girl, or if maybe he'll run into her later on. Obviously, childhood friend love thing syndrome. I'm really curious where the show can go from here, because obviously my biggest kind of hesitancy that's already kind of rearing its head is that everybody has the same power. But more so, interestingly enough, everybody has a white arrow. And the white arrow apparently has a 100% chance of hitting and a 100% chance of killing. So essentially all these candidates, it's going to be a game of who sees who first, because they just use the arrow and it kills them. So I don't know how they're going to manipulate that, if it's going to be a thing of like, well, it doesn't work always on god candidates. It seemed like it worked pretty well on this one guy at the very end of the episode. So again, big question mark there. But so far, it looks great. Visually, it looks really good. There was a few parts where I seen that they were using CGI for Nase, but it was so far away, it wasn't very apparent. The rest of it show looks really great. Some really visually beautiful shots that I really did enjoy. Mirai doesn't seem like he's too annoying so far. I figured like very beginning when they show that he obviously wanted to end himself, and then they had this whole segment of him essentially telling her to let him go. I was wondering if they were going to make him very annoying in that regard, but he kind of corrects himself a little bit. Obviously, I can feel the obvious issues that he's going to be facing because of what he's been through, so it's understandable. At the same time, he's not gotten to the point where he's annoying. So definitely so far, I'm not bothered by Mirai at all, which is definitely a surprise. But that's expected because the original creator, I never really had a problem with any of the characters they made in Death Note and whatnot. So I did find it funny that Nase pretty much points out the idea that the wings will allow him to fly and they won't bump into objects and that others can't see it. And then he proceeds to fly and his wing clips the ocean and the ocean's, shooting up water. It's like, it's hitting objects. It's hitting objects. But at any rate, I'm really curious to see where this goes, how they can possibly use these mechanics to create a very interesting story. I'm not too into, the whole idea of, there's these candidates and they're all fighting against each other for some goal. Shrug. I'm just really curious of how they play it out and how they can use these mechanisms to really tell a cool story. Like, is it going to be a focus on each one of these god candidates and what they're going through and why they would seek to be gods? What kind of powers and how they can play off the arrows to get against each other? Like I said, I've already established in the idea that one of these arrows is just basically an instant win. It definitely needs some sort of mechanic that would prevent that in a way that's interesting. But we'll see. I think this is a story that's going to need like 3 episodes to get me really kind of, if I'm going to be hooked or not, to really get an idea of how these candidates are going to compete against each other. This is going to be a full adaptation. It's already got a 2-core setup already established for it. So that is an exciting thing for a lot of people, that obviously this is going to go until completion. And obviously there's a lot of hype around the idea that this is from the Death Note creator. Now, again, like I mentioned before, I am hesitant because I've seen a lot of negativity around the source material. So, but I'm going to give this a shot. I am definitely going to wait to see if I mean, there's a possibility that the adaptation can fix some things that people were upset about. But either way, I'm excited for it. That's Platinum in my thoughts on the first episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does. And y'all take care.